there are things that we don't see. I think we hear about things, Dan, but behind the scenes, I think the king really is trying to help Harry because he knows the money situation is really bad. And so bringing Harry back into the fold while the king is still on the throne, King Charles, is what I think they're trying to do because that's the only option right now. Nothing is going to pan out in California. There's no other deals. Their reputation is in the toilet.
Developing today, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are facing financial ruin after a series of massive flops. Things are so bad, and remember, this is the woman who just a few months ago said she was going to become a billionaire, that they are now considering downsizing their dreams. This from Shooter Scoop. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are quietly cutting costs because life in Montecito isn't adding up anymore.
And I mean, I have heard rumors about the royal family even wanting to, well, actually not William, but the king, trying to really bring Harry back into the fold because I think there are things that we don't see. I think we hear about things, Dan, but behind the scenes, I think the king really is trying to help Harry because he knows the money situation is really bad. And so bringing Harry back into the fold while the king is still on the throne, King Charles, is what I think they're trying to do because that's the only option right now. Nothing is going to pan out in California. There's no other deals. Their reputation is in the toilet in California. I mean, really, this is what they're trying to do. And it's going to be very awkward for them to get into the theater.
Hey, Dinah, there's also trouble for Harry when it comes to the Invictus Games. In fact, I would go as far to say that the Invictus Games are now in crisis, and this is really bad news for the man that has already lost Centre Bali and whose African Parks charity is a total mess. And I think a huge scandal just waiting to explode at some point. For this from the Daily Mail, Harry's mentor Edward Lane Fox has this week quit Invictus, but then what we're also seeing, P. Dinah, is the mainstream media and allies of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, in a couple of cases which I'll come to shortly, try and continue to pile the pressure on Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, to in some way change their stance on Harry and Meghan. And what I find particularly grim, and this is what I'll come to in a moment, is they are now even dragging in Archie and Lily and the royal cousins into this game. But first to The Sun. And remember, I was the executive editor at The Sun for a very long time. Jane Moore is considered the voice of The Sun. She's a loose woman star, but she writes pretty much whatever the editorial line of the newspaper is. And up until this point, The Sun had been doggedly pro-William and Catherine, but even The Sun, and I'm disgusted by this, is now trying to rehabilitate Prince Harry, and they're doing it via their main columnist. But once again, P. Dinah, the fundamental point here was missed. Harry and Meghan had an opportunity to give the children the right, and I believe it was their right, and this is why I think those two children could be very furious with their so-called parents in the years to come. But they had the opportunity, Harry and Meghan had the opportunity to give these two young children a chance to know their cousins. And they could have done that, P. Dinah, when, for example, the late Queen Elizabeth II invited the family to spend time at Balmoral. They refused her invitation. Sure, it would have been awkward with William and Catherine, but P. Dinah, there would have been opportunities when, for example, the whole family got together. If the children had been there, they could have gone off to play independently, or at least meet independently. George and Charlotte and Louis, I guess particularly Louis, given his age, it is closer than the other two. But that didn't happen. And that didn't happen because of Harry and Meghan, other Powell shares, Bottom line, Harry and Meghan are learning what everyone else already knows. When the income drops, the outgoings have to follow. Pete, Dinah, I find this report fascinating. I have been well aware that these two are highly concerned about the financial calamity that is oncoming. Because remember, at this rate, they are pumping money into Meghan's business, and Harry isn't earning a thing. Of course, they have the deals previously, but there was no real money made from Lemonada, for example, the follow-up to Spotify. So they are in deep financial doo-doo because they want to live a life like the Kardashians. They want to live a life like Oprah Winfrey. They want to live a life like Ellen DeGeneres, like Gwyneth Paltrow, like Jennifer Aniston. But I mean, really, this is one of Charles's last power plays, I guess, because very soon we know, and we know it's already shifting, the gravity of power moves closer to the air. But I was also very shocked by the Daily Telegraph, who decided to reel in a woman who I find quite despicable, actually. She's called Kate Williams. She's a so-called historian, but she has been one of the biggest propagandists for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle for a very long time. And they put this piece on the front page. History shows that Harry's children could fix the royal rift. She wrote, Archie and Lilibet may one day play a critical role in smoothing over their father's fractured relations. And she says there is a rich tradition of friendship and support between adult royal cousins in Britain, which points to a way in which the fissure between the Waleses and the Sussexes might be bridged should the younger generation seek to establish their own bond as they grow older. All of these examples would suggest there is much to gain for the monarch and the family members concerned in enduring bonds between royal cousins. Thankfully, matters have moved on because she's a historian.
Because Harry is doing some things that shows his desperation. Let's just put it like that. That's what I believe is happening.
And Pete, Dinah, in some ways a lighter story of the week, quite literally, but also in some ways really sad. How do you feel about the fact that Catherine, the Princess of Wales, actually felt like she had to change her hairdo from this first look to then a new style that she debuted at the rugby last weekend after a whole load of internet trolling?
It's just so terrible what this woman has to go through. I mean, she does everything right, but still she has people that are trolling her just for her hair. I don't understand it. She is just such a sweet person. And to even have to change your look because of what people are saying just is really sad to me, because you shouldn't have to put up with people treating you like this, especially when you show up in such a good way every single time.
I believe they've already long passed the high watermark of their commercial success. And this is why the arrogance for so many years of them thinking that they could make all of this money without putting in the work was always going to come back and bite them. And my God, it has.
Yeah, so Harry has not put in the work. He certainly is not someone, I think, that is used to being in a situation where you have to get yourself out of a desperate situation. So I think, yeah, he's leaning heavily on the king to get support and help. And Meghan is going to keep trying, but you see, the only problem we have is with Harry trying to really get himself back into the royal fold. Meghan is never going to be about that lifestyle. She's never going to be a part of the plan. So how does this end up working out? I cannot imagine this being something that is going to be successful for him.
How do you feel about the fact that Catherine, the Princess of Wales, actually felt like she had to change her hairdo from this first look to then a new style that she debuted at the rugby last weekend after a whole load of internet trolling?
It's just so terrible what this woman has to go through. I mean, she does everything right, but still she has people that are trolling her just for her hair. I don't understand it. She is just such a sweet person. And to even have to change your look because of what people are saying just It's really sad to me because you shouldn't have to put up with people treating you like this, especially when you show up in such a good way every single time. She doesn't put a foot wrong, but she always seems to get this bad rap for the things that she does. And I just am very sorry for her that she has to go through these things, quite honestly.
Once hailed as the breakout royals of the modern era, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were supposed to be the ultimate power couple. They had the titles, the tabloid spotlight, and, most importantly, a blank check from Hollywood. But just a few short years after their dramatic exit from the royal family, that dream is reportedly collapsing. Fast. The California sun isn't shining like it used to on the Sussexes. And behind the filtered Instagram smiles, insiders say it's financial chaos. The image was crafted with precision. A $14 million Montecito mansion, celeb-studded partnerships, billion-dollar brand ambitions, and the air of independence. Meghan was allegedly aiming to become a mogul in her own right. Oprah meets Gwyneth Paltrow with a splash of Princess Diana mystique. But that narrative has started to unravel. Quietly at first, then suddenly. The deals that were meant to fund their freedom are now either dried up, dead in the water, or mysteriously stalled. Spotify, gone. Netflix, allegedly dialing back. Lemonada, the audio follow-up to Meghan's podcast, barely a whisper of success. For a couple who were once promised a media empire, the receipts tell a very different story. Insiders now claim the couple is being forced to make tough decisions behind closed doors. According to a report from Shooter Scoop, Harry and Meghan are quietly cutting costs. That's not something anyone expected from the duo, who once traveled via private jet with celebrities on speed dial. Life in Montecito, it seems, isn't adding up anymore. The source bluntly states they can't live like a king and queen without a royal paycheck, and with no steady income to back their lifestyle. Even the wealthiest trust funds begin to wither under the weight of California opulence. Make no mistake, Harry isn't broke. Not yet. He still has the cushion of Princess Diana's inheritance, estimated at around $10 million and an additional $7-8 million reportedly passed on from the Queen Mother. But when you factor in staff salaries, mansion upkeep, security, travel, and Meghan's brand ambitions, that money burns fast. Private jets, couture wardrobes, and PR teams don't come cheap. Not to mention those jet-setting lifestyle perks once offered by celebrity friends like Elton John and Tyler Perry. They're no longer on speed dial. The favors have dried up, and the silence from Hollywood's elite is starting to get loud. This isn't just a celebrity couple scaling back. This is a duo who staked their entire future on public fascination. And now, according to some royal commentators, even that is wearing thin. There's no big breakout project, no global product line, no billion-dollar brand. The press has turned skeptical. The Hollywood crowd is said to be distancing itself. And the public, they're losing interest. And Meghan, who once boldly claimed she had billionaire potential, is now, according to insiders, facing the stark reality that those dreams may need to be drastically downsized. From red carpets to budget cuts, the optics are shifting, fast. But the biggest question is this: if the California dream is dead, what's the backup plan? Because Harry's next move could change everything. Behind the perfectly filtered photos and polished interviews lies a much darker truth. The Sussexes are running out of options, and more alarmingly, out of money. What began as a bold leap into financial freedom is now, according to sources, becoming a scramble to keep the lights on in Montecito. And the desperation? It's reportedly starting to show. They walked away from royal duties with heads held high, confident in their ability to monetize their global fame. The theory was simple: turn the firm into the brand. But reality had other plans. As deals began to dry up and Hollywood enthusiasm cooled, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle found themselves with champagne taste and a rapidly shrinking budget. According to multiple insiders, the collapse didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, steady unraveling. First, Spotify pulled the plug, allegedly due to underperformance. Then, Netflix reportedly shifted its focus, leaving its future projects hanging by a thread. Meghan's much-hyped podcast fizzled out after just one season, and no follow-up series has captured attention the way they'd hoped. Behind closed doors, belt-tightening measures reportedly began. Staff were let go. Travel is scaled back. Security teams, once bulletproof and ever-present, are now allegedly being funded through creative means, including questionable charity ties that have sparked growing controversy. And here's where things get uncomfortably real. They were never supposed to need a plan B. From the beginning, their strategy relied on the illusion of unstoppable success. That illusion, glossy, curated, and pumped through a relentless PR machine, was what they thought would keep the checks coming. But the entertainment world is ruthless, and the audience has moved on. Even now, Harry isn't technically destitute. He still holds significant inheritance money, approximately $10 million from Princess Diana, and another $7-8 million from the Queen Mother. But that kind of nest egg only lasts so long when you're playing in the same tax bracket as Oprah and Elon. The mortgage on their $14 million Montecito mansion doesn't pay itself, and private jet travel alone can burn through 6 figures in a single weekend. Add in nannies, chefs, stylists, lawyers, and consultants, and suddenly, even millions start to look like pocket change. And then there's the image. Meghan's desire to mirror the lifestyle of women like Gwyneth Paltrow or Jennifer Aniston requires constant visibility and brand polish. But unlike those women, Meghan doesn't have decades of box office hits or evergreen product lines fueling passive income. She's working from scratch in a market that seems to have already moved on. To make matters worse, a quiet exodus is reportedly underway among their inner circle. Former celebrity allies like Elton John and Tyler Perry are said to be distancing themselves. No more free jets, no more lavish gifts, no more phone calls. The Sussexes, once the toast of the town, are now being ghosted. And yet, there's another layer. One is even more concerning. Sources close to the couple suggest that Meghan's new ventures are draining what little financial cushion remains. Investments into business ideas, branding, and development teams reportedly haven't generated the return they expected. Harry, for his part, is said to be bringing in very little. His name alone doesn't carry the same commercial value it once did. And when even the tabloids begin to openly question whether you can fund your lifestyle, it's not just a rumor. It's a warning. So what happens when the money truly runs out? Some believe that moment is already here, and the Sussexes are now playing a dangerous game of illusion, stretching the narrative as far as it will go, hoping to score one more big deal before everything crashes. Others speculate that this financial crisis is exactly why Harry is suddenly resurfacing in London, clinging to royal identity, trying to remind the world he's still one of them. But the biggest red flag? According to multiple reports, King Charles knows all of this, and may be stepping in behind the scenes, not out of affection, but out of necessity. Because if Harry falls too far, he doesn't just damage himself, he takes the monarchy's reputation with him. And that's when the real power games begin. At first glance, the royal family has been tight-lipped. No statements, no photo ops, no dramatic reunions. But that silence, it might be hiding something far more calculated. Because according to growing speculation and inside whispers, King Charles isn't just sitting back watching his youngest son spiral. He's secretly pulling strings behind the scenes. Why? Not for love, say some, but out of royal necessity. The theory goes like this. Charles knows exactly how bad things are for Harry and Meghan. The palace has eyes everywhere. Whether it's private intelligence, press leaks, or quiet conversations with former allies, the monarch is reportedly well aware of Harry's dwindling cash flow, failing business ventures, and collapsing reputation. And more importantly, Charles understands what could happen if Harry hits rock bottom. A disgraced prince, isolated in California, struggling financially, and willing to do anything to survive, including another tell-all, another betrayal, another explosion that the monarchy simply can't afford. So instead of cutting him off entirely, Charles may be doing something no one expected, helping him, quietly. The clues have been subtle, but they're starting to stack up. Recent shifts in media tone, once brutally critical, now appear curiously sympathetic. The Sun, long known as William's loyal press outlet, ran a shocking column suggesting the royal family embrace Harry back into the fold. Even more bizarre, the piece was written by Jane Moore, a longtime media insider closely aligned with palace messaging. The same Jane Moore, who once shredded Harry's behavior, is now painting him as a misunderstood spare who needs compassion. Then came the Daily Telegraph, allowing royal commentator Kate Williams to pen what many believe was palace-planted propaganda. The piece boldly claimed that Archie and Lilibet could be the key to repairing the family rift, and that royal cousins might one day stand united on the Buckingham Palace balcony. It read less like journalism and more like a press release from Team Sussex. But here's the twist. None of this is coming from William. In fact, multiple sources suggest Prince William is firmly against any reconciliation. His stance hasn't changed. Forgive Harry? Maybe. But welcome Meghan back into the royal orbit? Absolutely not. And yet, this coordinated media campaign seems to be moving forward anyway. That's why many royal watchers are now pointing fingers at Charles. Not out in the open, not with public hugs or charity appearances, but behind the scenes, authorizing subtle narrative shifts, working through trusted allies, and maybe even dangling the promise of forgiveness under very strict conditions. The goal? To keep Harry afloat, reputationally and financially, just enough to stop him from sinking the monarchy with him. It's the same strategy, some say, that was used for Queen Camilla. Once the most hated woman in the UK, Camilla underwent a slow, deliberate image transformation. Today, she's Queen Consort, and arguably one of the most stable forces inside the royal machine. Could Charles be applying the same strategy to his own son? It's not about emotion, it's about legacy. Charles doesn't want to die with one son branded as a pariah, and the other fuming behind palace walls. That's not a legacy, it's a disaster. And if quietly helping Harry secure a few strategic deals, smoothing his image, or even orchestrating a backdoor return to the UK is what it takes to protect the monarchy from future landmines, Charles is pragmatic enough to do it, even if it risks further alienating William. Because make no mistake, this is a power play, and time is running out. Charles isn't just facing a rebellious son. He's battling illness, a skeptical public, and a fast-changing world where one misstep could tarnish the entire royal institution. This isn't about bringing the family back together for Christmas. It's about containing a scandal before it explodes, again. But what if this covert rescue mission has one fatal flaw? Meghan. And that's exactly where the plan begins to crumble. When Meghan Markle first stepped away from royal life, she didn't just want independence. She wanted influence. The plan was grand, audacious even. Build a global lifestyle empire from the hills of Montecito, a podcast network, a wellness brand, a fashion line, children's content, philanthropy, all under one sleek, powerful banner. In her own words, she didn't just want to thrive in Hollywood, she wanted to own it. But just a few years in, the mirage is cracking. Gone are the days of giddy Netflix announcements and whispered rumors of billion-dollar valuations. Behind the scenes, according to multiple reports, Meghan's empire isn't expanding. It's shrinking, quietly, unevenly, and perhaps irreversibly. And while the public face still beams with curated confidence, industry insiders say the truth is much more grim. Let's start with the podcast. Archetypes debuted with great fanfare, landing Meghan a high-profile deal with Spotify. But by the end of its first season, it had reportedly underperformed so badly that Spotify cut ties completely. Executives behind the scenes weren't subtle about it either. One top figure even mocked the project as not delivering enough content to justify the millions spent. It wasn't just a breakup, it was an embarrassment. Then came the partnership with Lemonada Media, hailed by PR outlets as Meghan's triumphant audio comeback. But that too has fizzled, quietly. No new episodes, no major traction, no splashy rollouts. For a woman who once called herself a media executive, her content empire seems to be running on fumes. Meanwhile, rumors swirl about a supposed brand reboot, something involving wellness, luxury, and motherhood. Whispers of deals with beauty brands, kitchenware collections, and even rumors about a return to fashion. But none of it has materialized. No products, no launches, no investor buzz. Just a slow churn of vague trademarks, ghost-written articles, and staged photo ops. Meghan's ambition is there, but the traction, missing. And Hollywood has noticed. The Montecito mansion, once the symbol of their post-royal success, has become a gilded cage. The invitations have stopped. The A-list circles they once courted have cooled. Elton John, silent. Oprah, now keeping her distance. Tyler Perry, no longer offering private planes. The Sussexes are finding themselves on the wrong side of the velvet rope, not because they're controversial, but because they're no longer profitable. One source bluntly put it, they wanted to live like the Kardashians without doing the reality TV work. Another insider claimed Meghan had planned to out-Gwyneth, launching her own version of Goop, but without the years of product building, loyal customer bases, or internal infrastructure. In short, she wanted the brand without building the business, and now, she's reportedly slashing costs. According to Shooter Scoop, Meghan and Harry are cutting back on staff, security, and other luxuries. The mansion? It may not be up for sale yet, but rumors persist that a major lifestyle downgrade is on the table. Their ambitions, once sky high, are now being brought back down to earth, hard. And yet, in public, Meghan still plays the part. Polished, poised, perfectly filtered. But the cracks are beginning to show. The absence from Hollywood events, the lack of new media announcements, the slow fade of her personal brand from magazine covers to mere mentions. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Meghan's name no longer guarantees headlines. And in Hollywood, that's death. But perhaps the most damning sign of all, her silence. For a woman who once couldn't stop being profiled, interviewed, or celebrated, Meghan has gone noticeably quiet. And some believe it's not by choice, but by necessity. Her team can't spin the story anymore. The numbers don't lie. The deals are drying up. And the public, even her own supporters, are starting to ask uncomfortable questions. The billionaire fantasy is gone. The brand is stalled. And the empire? Built on sand. And as Meghan quietly regroups, desperately trying to salvage what's left, Harry is now doing something even more startling. He's going back. But will the UK even take him seriously anymore? He said he wanted out. He said he wanted freedom. But now, after years of scorched earth interviews, scathing memoirs, and staged independence, Prince Harry is slowly creeping back into the royal spotlight. And it's not hard to see why. Because when the deals fail, the brand fades, and the money dries up, what's left? The crown. Or at least the illusion of it. In recent months, Harry has made a series of quiet, but unmistakably calculated, moves that suggest a major pivot is underway. No longer content to play the Californian exile, he's begun reintroducing himself to the British public, not as an outsider, not as a rebel, but as royalty. It's subtle, deliberate, and to some, painfully obvious. He's trying to look like a prince again. His recent whirlwind visit to London sparked immediate speculation. Ostensibly there for charity work or legal proceedings, Harry made sure to be seen entering high-profile locations, always photographed just enough to trigger headlines, but not so much as to look like a stunt. He didn't just return to the UK, he returned with posture, with purpose, with the kind of optics his PR team desperately needed. But here's the twist. Nobody showed up. No family meetings were confirmed, no public appearances with King Charles, no quiet coffee with Prince William. Instead, he was left to roam alone. Reports say he was even stuck in London traffic like any other tourist, without blue lights or palace protection. And that 25-minute visit to Clarence's house, sources claim it was less a heartfelt reunion and more of a strategic consultation. A warning, not a welcome. Still, the message was clear. Harry is trying to resurrect his royal image. But why now? According to insiders, timing is everything. With his and Meghan's US-based ventures reportedly faltering, Harry knows the only currency he has left is his royal bloodline. Hollywood may not care anymore, but brands still do, especially overseas. And that means the more royal he looks, the more commercially viable he becomes. He's not trying to become king, he's trying to become relevant again. And that's why this shift is so transparent. From the tone of his public statements to the way he carries himself in front of the cameras, Harry is now leaning into monarchy, not running from it. The once defiant outsider now dresses in subdued suits, speaks in measured tones, and attends events that evoke his old image, the dutiful, serious Duke of Sussex. Even his rumored memoir sequel, once billed as a continuation of Bombshells, is reportedly being reconsidered. The backlash from Spare was seismic. If there is a next installment, many now believe it will be toned down, scrubbed of venom, and designed not to burn bridges, but to gently walk across them. Still, this rebrand hasn't been smooth. Public sentiment in the UK remains icy. Poll after poll shows that trust in Harry has plummeted. His approval ratings are at historic lows, and his public appearances, particularly the royal adjacent ones, often come across as awkward reminders of what once was, not what is. It's not just that the public has moved on, it's what they remember. They remember the interviews with Oprah, the barbs aimed at the Queen. The Netflix series is dripping with grievance. The chapters of Spare that humiliated his family, the suggestion that his brother physically attacked him, the implication is that his stepmother manipulated the press. And now he wants back in? It's a hard sell, but it's also his last card, and he knows it. The royal optics aren't just about ego anymore. They're about survival, about securing future deals, about looking serious enough for investors, noble enough for partnerships, and traditional enough for legacy projects. Because if Meghan's empire fails and the Montecito lifestyle collapses, Harry needs to be more than a celebrity. He needs to be a brand. And that brand, like it or not, is royalty. But there's just one problem. While Harry may want back in, William has slammed the door shut. And the power struggle that's about to erupt between the brothers, it's going to get brutal. For years, the public clung to the image of the royal brothers. Two boys walking behind their mother's casket, two soldiers, two princes, two best friends. But now that image is shattered, perhaps permanently, because behind the palace walls, a cold war is raging, and Prince William is done playing nice. While King Charles may be secretly orchestrating a path for Harry's return, Prince William isn't having it. Not now, not ever. Sources close to the royal household say William has drawn a firm, immovable line. There will be no reconciliation with his brother while Meghan is still in the picture. And that single condition may be the final roadblock that ends this saga for good. It's not just personal, it's institutional. William isn't just a brother, he's the heir, the future king, the steward of tradition. And Harry's actions, the interviews, the memoir, the Netflix drama, the accusations of racism and betrayal, weren't just attacks on their family. They were attacks on the crown, on the system that William has dedicated his life to uphold, on the very thing that will one day sit on his head. So when media outlets like The Sun and The Daily Telegraph begin running sympathetic features about Harry, calling for forgiveness, claiming Archie and Lilibet might one day unite the families, William sees it for what it is, a propaganda campaign. And he is reportedly furious. One royal insider described the reaction as absolute disbelief. The idea that Harry, who dragged the family through the mud, now gets a soft landing, with no real accountability, is, in William's eyes, a betrayal of everything the monarchy stands for. And the worst part? it's not just the press. This coordinated messaging, from longtime palace-aligned columnists like Jane Moore and supposed historians like Kate Williams, appears to be sanctioned from the top. Buckingham Palace is said to be testing public reaction to a Harry rehabilitation arc, possibly laying the groundwork for a staged return. But if so, they're doing it without William's blessing, which only deepens the divide. Because, make no mistake, William remembers everything. He remembers the Oprah interview, where Meghan suggested the royal family questioned the color of their unborn child. He remembers the Netflix series, where the institution was portrayed as cold, racist, and manipulative. He remembers Spare, where Harry accused him of physical violence and painted him as a robotic, angry heir. And he remembers how Meghan was positioned throughout all of it, as the misunderstood outsider, the victim, the woman too modern for tradition. And now the palace wants to move on? Not a chance. William's refusal isn't emotional, it's strategic. He knows that accepting Harry means accepting Meghan, and that means accepting everything they've said, done, and published. The monarchy can't afford that kind of precedent, not under his future reign. Privately, William is said to be deeply protective of Catherine, the Princess of Wales, who was one of Meghan's primary targets in interviews and headlines. The now infamous bridesmaid dress incident, the accusations of coldness, the rumors of rivalry. To William, forgiving Harry would be condoning the pain Meghan inflicted on his wife. And let's not forget, the public agrees with him. Polls show overwhelming support for William's stance. The British public, by and large, does not want a reconciliation. They've made up their minds. Harry crossed the line. Meghan burned the bridge. And any attempt to bring them back risks alienating the very audience the monarchy depends on. That's why this isn't just a family feud. It's a clash of futures. King Charles, with limited time and a legacy to salvage, may be willing to bend. He wants peace, even if it means compromise. But William's playing the long game. He's already acting like the monarch in waiting, calculated, unyielding, ready to protect the institution at all costs. And for Harry, that spells disaster, because no matter how many headlines shift, no matter how sympathetic the columns become, the heir is not budging. And as long as William holds the power, which he increasingly does, Harry remains locked out. But this royal standoff isn't just about the brothers anymore, because now the children are being pulled into the narrative. And what the palace is doing next may be the most shocking move of all. There's a line that even the most cynical royal commentators assumed would never be crossed. The children, innocent, shielded, off limits, or so we thought. But in the latest chapter of the Sussex saga, even the youngest members of the royal family are now being dragged into the spotlight, not for who they are, but for what they symbolize. And it's turning into one of the most manipulative PR campaigns the monarchy has seen in years. At the center of it all, Archie and Lilibet. They were born into history. Royal blood, American soil, and a family legacy riddled with conflict. But now, these two children, still far too young to understand their place in the world, are being used by adults on both sides of the Atlantic as pawns in a larger war of optics, legacy, and power. The first alarm bell rang when the Daily Telegraph published a glowing feature suggesting that Archie and Lilibet might be the key to healing the royal rift. Written by Kate Williams, a supposed historian with long-standing ties to Sussex-friendly media circles, the article painted an almost fairy tale vision, one where the cousins, including Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, would one day stand together on the Buckingham Palace balcony, symbolizing unity across the fractured family. It was a warm image, hopeful even, but to many, it reeked of something else entirely: damage control. Because behind the soft-focused sentiment was a far more calculated message. If Harry and Meghan couldn't return to royal favor themselves, perhaps their children could. If the public won't forgive the parents, maybe they'll rally behind the next generation. It wasn't reconciliation, it was redirection. A subtle reframing of the Sussex brand through the innocence of their children, and this wasn't a one-off. Days later, The Sun, long seen as staunchly pro-William, published an unexpected column by Jane Moore, essentially echoing the same idea. Harry's pain, Meghan's outsider status, and the deep emotional scars of being the spare should be considered with compassion. The suggestion that perhaps the royal family should look past the damage and embrace Harry, and by extension, his children, before it's too late. But here's the problem. It is already too late. Because Archie and Lilibet don't know their royal cousins, they don't play with George and Charlotte. They've never gone frog hunting at Balmoral. They don't share bedtime stories at Sandringham or giggle together during royal engagements. Those moments, the same ones that bonded William to Zara, Harry to Eugenie, and Charles to Anne, never happened for this generation. And why? Because Harry and Meghan refused every opportunity. According to palace insiders, Queen Elizabeth personally invited the Sussexes to Balmoral multiple times, offering the chance for the children to connect away from the cameras, in peace, as a family. But the invitations were declined. The atmosphere would be too awkward, they said. Too cold? Too controlled? But the consequence? A generation of royal cousins growing up as strangers? And now, the same media that once glorified Harry and Meghan's independence is scrambling to suggest those bonds can still be formed, someday, somehow. But it's wishful thinking, and many in the public see it for what it is: a last-ditch PR strategy designed to soften Harry's image through his children. It's also raising serious ethical questions. Why are journalists and palace insiders suddenly using children as narrative tools? Why is it acceptable to float fantasy scenarios about Archie and Lilibet reconciling with George and Charlotte, when none of these children had a say in the fallout that drove their families apart? The answer lies in desperation. Harry's brand is wounded. Meghan's empire is faltering. The Netflix deals are shaky, the Spotify deals are gone, and the public sympathy is fading. So now they're pivoting to the one thing that still sparks emotion: the image of children. Innocent, photogenic, and untouched by scandal. For now. But there's another layer to this, one that could explode in years to come. What happens when Archie and Lilibet grow up and learn what they missed out on? The royal cousins never met, the castles they never visited, the family they were cut off from. What happens when they read the interviews, watch the documentaries, and discover that their absence wasn't inevitable? It was engineered. Some royal commentators believe there will be resentment, a reckoning, that these children, born into one of the most powerful families in history, will one day question why they were raised in exile, used as symbols in a war they never started. And that resentment, it may not just be directed at the palace, it may land squarely on the shoulders of Harry and Meghan. Because if this reconciliation narrative truly depends on children repairing what adults destroyed, then the damage is already done. And now, with the spotlight shifting back toward the charities that once defined Harry's public identity, the cracks are getting even deeper, especially when it comes to Invictus, and the allies who are quietly walking away. For a long time, there was one part of Prince Harry's life that remained sacred. One project even his fiercest critics hesitated to touch. One legacy he could proudly claim as his own, apart from the palace, apart from Meghan, apart from scandal: the Invictus Games. Born out of Harry's deep connection to wounded veterans and his own military experience, Invictus was more than just a sports event. It was the cause, a symbol of dignity, resilience, and the power of purpose. Even after Harry left royal life behind, Invictus remained untarnished, until now. Because behind the scenes, insiders say the Invictus Games are in crisis, and the warning signs are flashing red. The first crack appeared earlier this year, when Edward Lane Fox, Harry's longtime confidant and private secretary, quietly stepped down from the Invictus board. This wasn't just any aide. Lane Fox had been with Harry from the very beginning, a stabilizing force during the most chaotic years of his life. His departure raised eyebrows, but when it was quickly followed by two more exits, Patrick Nichol and J.J. Chalmers, another close Invictus ally, it became clear something was very wrong. These weren't just routine board changes. These were the core architects of Invictus, abandoning ship. Publicly, the palace and the charity downplayed it. Term limits, they said. Time to rotate. But behind closed doors, the whispers grew louder. Former staffers and royal insiders hinted at deeper issues: internal disagreements, financial questions, and a growing discomfort with how the games were being managed. And the elephant in the room? Meghan. According to Angela Levin and other outspoken royal commentators, Meghan's increasing involvement with Invictus has not been welcomed by everyone behind the scenes. From overstepping her role during public events to allegedly pushing PR campaigns that centered more on her image than on the athletes themselves, sources say her presence has created tension, not unity. And then there's the money. The Invictus Foundation recently revealed a sharp spike in donations. 3.8 million in 24, up from 2.7 million the year before. On the surface, this sounds like good news, but where is it going? And why are veteran insiders walking away just as the numbers go up? One theory, quietly discussed in donor circles, suggests expenses have ballooned, particularly when the Sussexes are involved. Lavish venues, luxury accommodations, VIP-only events. Suddenly, the charity has the optics of a royal-adjacent celebrity festival. And many in the veteran community aren't impressed. For them, Invictus was never about the glitz. It was about healing, brotherhood, purpose. And now, with Harry spiraling in his personal life and Meghan allegedly reshaping the event's public face, the mission has blurred. But the damage goes beyond internal politics. Because if Harry loses Invictus, the last pure thing in his post-royal portfolio, what's left? Not Spotify, not Netflix, not Lemonada, not African parks, which, like Sentebale, is reportedly mired in leadership instability and donor fatigue. Invictus was his rock, and now it's crumbling. The exits of Lane Fox and others are not just symbolic, they're strategic retreats. Royal watchers say that high-integrity individuals are choosing to walk away now, before their reputations get caught in the fallout of whatever's brewing behind the scenes. And that's the most damning sign of all. Those who know Harry best are quietly walking away when he needs them most. Which leads to a haunting question. What do they know that the rest of us don't? Some suspect a financial reckoning is on the horizon. Unexplained expenditures, conflicting roles, blurred lines between charitable funds and personal branding. Others believe it's deeper than money. That Harry, emotionally adrift and increasingly isolated, is no longer capable of steering even his most beloved projects through the storm. Either way, the writing is on the wall. Invictus is no longer untouchable. The shield has cracked. The headlines are shifting. And Harry, the once celebrated veteran prince, now looks like a man desperately clinging to the only structure he hasn't burned down. But if even that structure collapses, there may be nothing left to protect him. Not in Hollywood, not in Montecito, not in Windsor. And as the Invictus fallout deepens, another truth is emerging. One even more painful and far more personal. Harry may not just be losing his legacy. He may be losing himself. He was once the world's most beloved prince, the soldier, the rebel, the son of Diana. But now, thousands of miles from the crown he once called home, Prince Harry lives in a gilded cage of his own making, cut off from family, stripped of purpose, and increasingly, according to insiders, completely alone. This is not the life he imagined when he walked away from the palace gates. At first, the move to California seemed bold. A fresh start, sun-soaked days in Montecito, freedom from royal protocol, and the promise of building something new with Meghan. But as time passes and projects falter, that fresh start has started to look more like a silent exile, not imposed by the monarchy, but by circumstance. The money is fading, the fame is cooling. And Meghan? According to multiple sources, she's holding the reins tighter than ever. Insiders say Harry is increasingly dependent on Meghan for direction, identity, and even relevance. He no longer has the army, the palace, or the structure that once defined him. His staff is her staff. His projects are her brand. His public appearances are either tied to her image or conspicuously separated. And the more he tries to reconnect with the UK, the more she seems to dig in her heels and reinforce the divide. It's a brutal irony. Harry left the palace to escape control, only to allegedly fall under a different kind of influence. Not institutional, but emotional. Reports have long circulated that Meghan has no intention of returning to royal life, even on a symbolic level. She's said to have drawn a firm line. California is home. The UK is over. No more forced smiles on palace balconies. No more curtsies. No more royal reporting rota. She didn't leave Hollywood to play dress-up in Buckingham Palace, and that puts Harry in an impossible position. Because now, with his public image imploding, business ventures collapsing, and even Invictus shaking at its foundation, his only logical move is to lean back into the very identity he abandoned, royalty. But how can he do that when the woman he built his new life with won't go with him? Sources close to the couple say this tension is growing, not shrinking. Harry is said to be restless. Meghan, focused. Harry wants public forgiveness. Meghan wants public control. And as they pull in different directions, one toward Windsor, the other toward Montecito, the cracks in their so-called unbreakable partnership are becoming harder to ignore. Some insiders describe Harry as deeply lonely, increasingly isolated even within his own mansion. He doesn't golf with local celebrities. He doesn't have a British peer group in California. And many of Meghan's high-profile friends, the ones who once welcomed him with open arms, have allegedly backed away, unwilling to risk their own reputations on a collapsing brand. And let's not forget the public pressure. Every headline, every poll, every YouTube comment threads the same message. Harry is not who he used to be. And the longer he remains in California, the more disconnected he becomes from the very people who once adored him. He's not British enough for the UK anymore, and not Hollywood enough for LA. He's floating in limbo, a prince without a palace, a celebrity without a following, a husband trapped between duty and devotion, and the optics aren't getting any better. Remember that recent hotel stay in London? Some say the expenses were covered by a charity, not out of his personal pocket. A subtle but chilling sign that even basic accommodations may require outside help now. And if true, that level of dependency could be catastrophic for his reputation, especially in the UK, where royal privilege is tolerated, but publicly funded indulgence is not. Which brings us to the question nobody dares ask out loud. What if Harry wants to go back, but can't? Not just because of William, not just because of the press, but because Meghan won't allow it. It's a terrifying thought. A prince unable to return home, stranded in a life that's no longer glamorous, no longer successful, and no longer sustainable. But what's worse? The sense that it's too late to change course. Because to admit defeat now, to walk away from Montecito, from Meghan's vision, from the independent future they fought so hard to build, would be to admit that everything they said, wrote, and filmed was wrong. And Harry's pride may not survive that. But as King Charles's health concerns grow and the monarchy begins quietly preparing for a new era, the window for redemption is shrinking fast. And the man once hailed as the world's favorite prince may be stuck in exile forever. But the final blow isn't just about geography, it's about strategy. Because in the halls of the palace, someone else has already made their move. This isn't just a scandal. It's not just a family feud. This is the slow-motion collision of legacy, loyalty, and identity. And at the center of it all stands Prince Harry, flanked by a crumbling brand, a fractured family, and a public who's no longer sure whether to pity him or walk away. And now, for the first time since Megxit, we're watching what feels like the endgame or the breakdown, maybe both. What's becoming increasingly clear is that there is a quiet war being waged behind palace doors, not over crowns or thrones, but over how Harry's story ends. One camp, reportedly led by King Charles, believes in salvaging what remains. They see Harry as a wounded son, a vulnerable man lashing out, but still salvageable, not for sentiment, but for strategy. Because a completely broken Harry reflects badly on the entire royal apparatus. A runaway prince is a media circus, but a bankrupt one? That's a PR nightmare. So Charles, pragmatic to the core, may be attempting to pull off one final delicate maneuver, a soft, subtle reintegration, a way to quietly fold Harry back into the royal narrative without ceremony, without drama, and most importantly, without Meghan. Insiders say there's already movement behind the scenes. Trusted aides are floating trial balloons in the press, shifting media narratives, a drip feed of compassion pieces, urging the public to reconsider. It's not reconciliation, not yet. It's reputation rehab. But there's a problem, a very big one. William. The heir isn't just resisting this plan. He's allegedly fighting it tooth and nail. To William, this isn't a media strategy. It's betrayal. It's asking him to pretend nothing happened, to forget Spare, to ignore Netflix, to erase the accusations hurled at his wife. And that's not a price he's willing to pay. Not now, not ever. And in a monarchy built on image, perception, and unified messaging, this split is catastrophic. One king is trying to save his son, one future king refusing to forget, and caught between them, a man slowly unraveling. Because let's be brutally honest, Harry is running out of options. He can't go forward in Hollywood. The doors are closing. He can't go backward into the royal fold, not with William holding the keys. And he can't stand still, because the media, the public, the money, everything depends on momentum. So what does he do? He tries to perform, pose like a prince in public, drop into London for 25-minute meetings, reignite the royal optics, signal loyalty without receiving any in return. But it all feels hollow, a dance without music, a role without a script. And Meghan? According to several royal commentators, she's watching it all with growing distance, laser-focused on her own survival, her own brand, her own comeback. She knows the walls are closing in, and she's not waiting around for Harry to figure it out. So now, with Invictus wobbling, Montecito darkening, and the press turning, the question isn't whether Harry can be saved, it's whether anyone still wants to. And that, perhaps, is the real tragedy. Because for all the headlines, documentaries, and public tantrums, Harry was never built to go it alone. He needed the military, the institution, the family, the scaffolding of something bigger than himself. But he dismantled it, piece by piece. And now, standing in the wreckage, he may be realizing the one thing he never wanted to believe. He's not the architect of a new future. He's the casualty of a lost one. And the royal family, they're moving on, with or without him, because the crown waits for no one, not even a prince.